Again, good evening everyone. My name is Ken Miller. I'm the director of Bayliss Public Library, and welcome to the Superior Poetry Cafe. We're pleased to have Dion Mindykowski, who's tonight's featured poet. He's the director of the Tequamanon Area School Public Library in Newberry. He has numerous publications and readings to his credit. He's doing great things at Newberry, I understand, with programming and stuff like that. We're just delighted to have you here. After his reading, there'll be an open mic, so please be sure and sign up in the back. And please join me in welcoming Dion Mindykowski. Welcome.
I don't know if it's even on. Oh, there we go. I don't think I really need this in a small crowd, but I like it anyway, so it's a prop. I sent out a bio to Susan a couple weeks ago that included some of the places that I read before. And for those of you who haven't read it, I just want to talk a little bit about that. I used to live in Bay City, Michigan, before I got the job in Newberry. So in October of 2010, I moved up here. Down in Bay City, I had a rotating group of musicians that performed with me while I did my poetry. I did a little mild theatrics with it, where I planted people in the audience, that sort of fun stuff. I don't know anybody for that stuff up here yet, so I'm still getting the lay of the land. So I'm up here today. I hope it's a good reading for you. But this is actually my first UP reading, and hopefully as I do a few more of these in the UP, I'll pick up some musicians and some actors to get involved and maybe come back again sometime with more of a stage show for you. This first piece is called History Stitched. I write quite a bit, and I have some longer pieces that will either just flow together from the start or that I'll work on over time. And then I'm always jotting down these poetic thoughts that maybe can end up somewhere. And I realized after 2-3 years of multiple journals of the same area, I was living in the same place, working the same job. So a fragment from October matches up almost perfectly with one from the next February. So as I started assembling these, I found they made 3 very long poems, fragment pieces that became a trilogy. And I'm going to start out with one of those. History Stitched. The age is not cohesive. Its storytellers are distracted, and its histories have been stitched together. All these things I've written have dampened in their travels. In the first chapter, the frogs were strings tuned tight and plucked once. The room is loud with contrasting ideas of the Bhagavad Gita. Diphenhydramine visions. I'm blind in a labyrinth of mirrors. It's easy without sight. The arms of a Nancy leave the mark of dermal ridges on the glass as I find my way to the next sequence. 5 a.m. on 5th Streets of everywhere. Blades and bells 2 feet from the curb in place of iron fence maple and parking meters. Caddis and ferment with the caves of Sinsas. Sadis and brocates pedestrians with the Nile's flood. They copulate in every position on this route. It reminds me of Chicago. The air raid siren of sex, she is golden brown with darkened speckles, will later soar with sapphires. Infinite bird song that I can identify besides this duck call and maybe blackbirds, because I watch one sifting debris. M25 inhales, exhales, with occasional traffic, a steady climactic breath with the silence of a biteless river. The Quantica Sea is running too high and too muddy. I meditate on Snyder and staying in this moment, a skeleton cross-legged on the remnants of this boat launch. Reconstructing and reconnecting side streets, faces displaced. I just don't know what to say to the antiquated photographs of friends. And these mist-clouded walls keep the eastern past mysterious and alluring. I wonder, is it her footsteps I hear in the Adirondacks? Did she speak out in a dream, or were they words of women from books? I mix tobacco and cheap black coffee to create nostalgia for last year's diners. I count an abacus, remembering carved ivory and mahjong. Whiskey dangerously among branches and leaves. I have trouble remembering the Golden Gate. I revisit the way there. The sidewalk from X-Lot, the bus through Nebraska, the drive through Florida, the downtime at eventless paths. In the second chapter, the frogs are mechanical, the steady hum of machinery as it rusts in swamp water. The season was unreal. Virgin leaves gave way to the glow of showy yellow with the slightest smirk of green. The curtains pressed loosely towards the wind looked the same when the sun was first seen. It was a color that before yesterday did not exist, and it contrasted everything: the real green of the grass, the apocalypse of the month yet to come, the snow that we anticipated. Michigan, a lament and praise. The dinosaur without rail gasps. The abandoned, painted bright orange, noticed and then raised. The lake eats ships. Superior's tided whitefish quarrels with itself. The descendants of Atlantis are still sinking. The reluctance of receding glaciers. She said goodbye with, "We need to talk." "No, we don't," I replied. "Get out of my car." I leaned over, pulled the door closed. I realized that I was John Fry. With grisly feet uncut, the spirit walks. The road adorned with the dead of 3 centuries. Emily Dickinson lives on ridge, the restlessness of reading glasses. 1 hour across solid waters and stained glass cement from 2 vantage points, the print shop, the roads. In the Midwest, looking for the sunrise giant whose snow shadow falls across the torso of corn. As a boy, I sensed the coming war, knew I'd survive among swamp waters. Florida almost devoured me, lost among knee-high palms. Aurora borealis as far south as the Keys, the wind like fighting cats. Every morning, Rennick's sun swims between the towers and Rennick writes positively forward. Scarlet eyes leave a stain as they roll across fingerprints. The page was always modeling aria on New Year's, marrying a surgeon. Echoing throaty calls from within the Davison slip. Under the rudder, wood split and sun bleached, the invisible electric shake of cicada. I try to identify the tree in which the insect surges. Jagged hearts with pointed fingers accusingly, were there wind against the currents, small whitecaps would sound like wings. I ponder the significance of the ibis and NGC 4594 in Virgo, the duality of a lake sunset and a galaxy. The wide look of storms as they settle over Portugal. There are 2 worlds, the setting sun split by clouds, the sand as it becomes the night that I sink lazily into. Cast shadows across hours until falling beneath stilted palm-thatched roofs of sporadic shoreline huts. The water shifts and settles, singing like nocturnal birds among distant frogs. Kerouac's novels drip, drip, drip this joy from slanted roof, but on other pages he mourned the rain when there was none, the sun when wet like this. This silhouette of tree and shooting stars, tabby ghosts in the orange streetlight, vanilla smoke from ancestral pipe, these fleeting pleasures. Thank you. I've noticed that some of my pieces tend to be a little bit longer, so I've interspersed them with some shorter pieces so you can break your tension up a bit throughout the reading here. This next one is called Box Elders. For 22 years, I awoke among the box elders of the state. Their twisting saber seeds and sharp heart leaves ceased to move me, but my awe is rekindled as I follow the paths of the Aboriginal and Indian trails bust that chase sunsets. I never loved Michigan more than what I did when leaving her. The books that I packed were neglected by the amorous eyes that watched the roadside. So many rare species of birds that glittered blue, littering the highway. The bridges, like Monet's Waterloo, that owe their beauty to pollution. The girl in Kalamazoo wearing leopard print that I was too shy to talk to. And the trees, their ghosts, white bark invoking nostalgia when I awake in empty Nebraska. This one really doesn't have a title. I don't know why, I just never gave it one. Eventually I will when I submit some of these for publication here. The first one I read was published in Paramount and Pentaquark out of Chicago, and I went there for the reading, and it was a very nice setting with a waterfront cafe with Lake Michigan right behind you as you read. So it's a very nice setting too, Susan, but there's no Lake Michigan here.
There is blue.
Yes, we can pretend. These are imaginations. And I would like to thank the Bayliss Library for putting this on. This is wonderful to have poets here once a month, every 2 months, whatever the schedule seems to be. But it's just wonderful to see this kind of art going on, and I hope to make it the July reading. Ghosts and communists are all shit to me. That doesn't mean I'm not intrigued. Jadwiga asked me when it was that I stopped writing about the supernatural, and I admitted that I had never started. No better time to begin, she said, as we kneeled in a low ceiling of her coal room of her Webster Street rental. A single white chair furnished the room. faced a window with no view. Red handprints of a long ago children kept the streetlights outside. The hieroglyphs, the cobwebs clinging to cement walls, the purple hue of Jadwiga's many bracelets were lit only by a flicker of Mary's immaculate heart. Where the Virgin touched her chest, the wick of the candle had warped and burnt the paint. Quick drink here. So how many people will be reading tonight for the open mic? 2, 3? Or playing music, either one. That's wonderful. And if you're really good, I may convince you to try to come to Newberry and do some performances there, because I'm always looking for people to perform in Newberry as well. I've put on an art festival since I've came there, and then we do various programs for the public. I think we had probably over 100 different programs for the small library last year, so it's always looking for new talent. Was there something needed?
Oh, he just didn't think the amplifier was on.
Oh, I don't know if it's on or.
I don't think it's even on.
Okay.
I can turn it up a little. It's number 4.
Okay. How's that? Better?
Yeah.
Okay, wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay. So, now that you can hear me, this is going to be the second of that fragment trilogy. As I said, the first one was published in Paramount and I'm submitting the second to various publications. And once those are printed, I'd like to release not only a chapbook with all 3 of the trilogy in them, I also need an annotated version, because so many of these pieces, these fragment pieces, fit together, but they have many different meanings. The first one that I had read, I challenged myself to write an erotic piece that could be read in any situation that nobody would know I was even reading it. And by this time, I look back and I read it, and I was saying, I don't even know what I wrote. So there's some stuff in there that I'd like to annotate that way, but it was definitely meant for situations like this. This one's Last Year's Machinery. College denied me war stories, but there were still casualties. All the philosophers died at 99, still in their infancy. The PhD advertised on the corkboard is in its grave now. We were told it would be recycled, but the paper and tin were always hauled away with the rest of the trash. I quote the dreams of a deceased friend, cat teeth and Japanese corpse. This is my education. It is hard to unlearn the spelling of Elizabeth. I wrote the first 5 chapters of novels that dismantled the instructor at her desk. In classrooms, I performed mutiny, but the rebellion was delayed by intimacy. I put my arms around her to keep her warm. All the books remain closed, and from last month's reading, Dolly stares with magnified eyes. He is with wings, but not the will. When the formality of his dance is done, we part as enemies with the occasional fragments of fond memories. Young love. He would apologize for erections, she would apologize for ignoring them. All of these books offer roads, no couches, so I wander. I'm infatuated with interstate sunsets. The sun falls to pieces and glows from within Flint. The hotel overlooks the rooftop of a Chinese buffet. It was my first glimpse of Daly's 68, and I did not understand the ageless trees of Lincoln Park. I'm alive in this night that refuses to freeze, though every cousin talks of snow. On foot with notebook map, breathing dust. I'm not the only one. We share a flask in the Oakland Hills, pedestrians on gravel curve. This coast of America is less glossy now. These casual fingertips more seductive. Cuba looks and says, all cocktails have beginnings. I come to realize that I neglected my albatross. It sits in the bureau drawer. When everyone left for Europe, Michigan was left in flames, but the auto plants remained, sunk into the earth to be discovered as temples in 3030. We worshipped engines and burned both heretics and mass transit systems. Like Ulysses, I returned. I woke to find the photo changed, but the words were I expected. South Center is a name forgotten, but we cannot ignore the progressive scale of motors, the differences between harvests. This year's skeletons look like birth. These plastic birds tangled in crops on Fridays and Mondays. The sunset at home, a late pastel, watercolor pigment spread thin on the horizon. Paint is spilled in the shadow of a young maple. Peripheral fire, a blaze that tries to hide in the shadows. Orange landscapes, the sound of a restless shift, golden orb in my backyard altar. After dark, I can still see the purple glow. Do they talk through the flicker of commercials? Kettle blows solo, the fuzziness of radio jazz basement broadcast. The blackbird flocks have stopped, settled to the ground as leaves among last pears. As the final evergreen flicker, I piece together the copper that really isn't mine and reflect upon my words and how they remain secret. I could be on these pages, but protest against the post offices. My submissions go unsent. Where did I lose the supernatural, the need for line breaks? There is rust on the invitation as it soaks in the dishwater. I should have studied and criticized, building a tin house, sketching the polio erotic, but instead I break the rules with sex. I'm supposed to be working, but I'm in bed. Textual innuendo. I left words to be found in the bathroom mirror, and I woke to the drip of her freshly showered hair. The evidence is scattered at the edge of sleep, everything in order except for the clothes discarded and the corner of the beige rug uplifted and creased with passion. Again, the rebellion has been allayed by intimacy, but now I've learned to write about it. Influenced by the S over Z, the intensity in those eyes is an antiquity. It's the gaze of dusty skeletons, 19th century poets wordless in their coffins, wicker chairs in a wedding hall. It's the only memory left. When the casket closed, I could not stop writing. Mari, do you remember her? Perfume floral. I never saw her as she slipped between shelves, grocery store aisles, automatic ghost doors open and out into the cement wilderness, the weeds knee-high with earthworm beards. She wrote about Saginaw shopping carts immobilized, and I followed her to standstill. Without a record of the weather, when the floodwaters freeze, they are forgotten. My history is recorded as fragments. She is pregnant with animal. I stole the slippers from every fairy tale. There's a little ceramic horse glistening. The landscape has been changed by rabbits, the rhythm of their skulls with fur still on. Their eyes aren't even closed. Dying is the only way that we resume our bond with nature. The doctor that I wait for ate on meager wages. He was imprisoned and now has given in to the grave. Last meals of clay and graphite. My last rites were given in 1933 when the candy stores became taverns. Glass bottles broken against basement concrete. That is my answer. I again wander the gravel shoulder path, looking for the theater where the Steppenwolf killed, as my funeral bell rings. No tickets are sold for the dance hall girls on Midland Street tonight. Those mornings, staring out the window, lost in thought, worship the chimney's shadow. The shed is boarded up, ancient, but previous winds have opened it. No one ever closes it. The breeze has stopped, the curtain still. Everyone in this hotel has passed away, and last year's machinery is again laughing. Another couple of short ones for you. This one was written after a trip to the Capitol. You see a couple of Michigan themes going throughout here, both praising the beauty and mourning some of the loss of economy and just good life for people. It's Michigan's a rough state for a lot of people. This is a Michigan wake. A Michigan wake. The Capitol tour guide is somber, like I am with so many mothers dying. There are caskets in Maine, hospital beds in Texas, but here we live in the ritual handfuls of dirt, thrown 3 feet covering the deceased. The ceiling gold paint drips its tears. At night, these crested hinges sigh and creak. We lie buried beneath the allegories, buried by justice, education, industry, all 8. One that I was going to pull out and didn't, so. This is actually a very long piece, so I'm not going to read the entire thing tonight. It makes the last 2 I read seem very short. But I want to read the beginning of it. What I did is I started creating a sort of epic poem about the logging history of Michigan that takes place in my hometown of Bay City. I'm sure that every logging area has its myths, but there was one particular lumberjack in Bay City, Joe Fournier, that some of you may have heard of before, that is one of the probably many lumberjacks that have been, in theory, what Paul Bunyan was based off of. So he was the local hero around there. He had a number of interesting features. He's very, very tall guy, had a double row of teeth supposedly. But also supposedly is that his skull was kept on display at City Hall in Bay City until it was stolen. When I started taking interest and looking into this, it had already been stolen at that point. I had a chance to go see for myself. So lots of newspaper articles saying that not only did he have the 2 rows of teeth, he was such a character that he would go and bite the rails of the bar and leave his teeth marks in it and stuff like that. So the lumberjacks have gotten a lot of just different mythology in the Michigan area, but not so much the poets. When I tried to research some of the literary heroes of Michigan, there's some, you can get some of it, but there's just a big void. So I thought I'd make some up because, the lumberjacks' tales, a lot of those are made up as well. So I started writing a poet into this epic piece that circles around the lumberjacks during the time that was the trade of Michigan. One more drink here before I... So this is the beginning to Lewitzky's Mile of Hell. Bay City in the gray, braying morn. Those that fell timber were due to arrive, racing their bounty by rail. Willett swam slightly behind. The hoots and hollers could be heard before the whistle. The acrid linger of liquor tasted before the steam. Preceding the train's southern route, doors were locked and windows barred. A poet kissed his winter muse one last time before her husband's return. A cloud descends in the downtown. Browns and deep greens, the colors of the forest floor caked upon the clothes of the shanty boys coming home. For 6 months they had lived among the wolves, became the beasts. Now they exit railed carriage trailing blood and broken glass, circling his pack among penned sheep. Lewitzky knew that they were near, not just by the sound of many boots and muffled stomp against the muddy street. It was silence that gave them away. Birdsong no longer rang out in the early spring fog. He hastened his pace, hefting barrels of booze from the wagon to the bowels of hell's basement. Any drink not under lock and key would be considered free to the thirsty lot that marched this way. With task complete, he collected his pay and sat beneath awnings memorizing the scene. A crowd in dirty layers approaching from the east. Steps ahead of the rest was not man, but tree. A white pine in spiked shoes, greeted promptly by Lewitzky. "Saginaw Joe, can I buy you a drink?" The feller grinned and gruffly said, "How about 3?" In the bar, space recedes as those clean and sober for a season prepare to make up for lost time. Shoulder to shoulder stood the fellers, the ganny dancers and belly robbers, the burlers that left the river alone, the synonymous pretty waiter girls and pickpockets, as well as townsfolk. There were also the poets, more than a few, though it was only 2 that made their presence impossible to ignore. One bumped elbows among the crowd, spilling drinks as he inked the tip of his pen, recording every saying and face lest he forget. The other flipped his hat and rolled from his tongue a foppish verse. A generous Jack moved to tears, though more so from the Chippewa lightning in his mug than from the words. He tipped a few coins in thanks. In the hat they shined as trophies of a paying art. For mere moments before mingling with the sawdust upon the floor, knocked aside as the poet was raised high, his screams of, "Down now, I say, and you brute," were muted beneath the camp boss bellow of Joe. How many coppers could I get to toss this one in the drink? The room full of liquor and pining for violence filled the poet's dropped hat to the brim, while its owner soon slid through a hatch in the floor and tasted Saginaw waters. As a finale, Joe grinned, showed off a double row of incisors, bicuspids, molars, and all their friends. He opened his jaw and then clamped it shut upon the bar rail. Smiling wide, he spit splinters to the floor and claimed his new hat. Lewitzky stood nearby, offering his hand upon the tall man's back, congratulations and praise, before filling Joe's belly with 3 shots of hard liquor once more. So, Lewitzky is the poet who keeps feeding the tall lumberjack with lots of drinks. What Joe does not know is that Lewitzky is in love with Joe's wife. And when Lewitzky goes away, when Joe goes away to chop wood, Lewitzky's in town and falling in love with her. And as the poem moves through, he begins to more than just pine for her, where they follow through on their love, and then he, being in love with her and knowing the only way he can be with her is if Joe is dead, he works out a plan to murder Joe. So. the regularly planned ones here. That one I had originally pulled out because it was too long as I read it, but I thought you should at least get the beginning on that one. Okay, I'll explain these next two pieces here. There's a drink that was preferred by a lot of the writers and painters called absinthe that for many years in America was made illegal. It has just about 3 years ago become legal in the United States again. And some of the problems with this drink was that it has extra herbs added that were considered dangerous, but when looking through the history, what it really is companies trying to make it cheaper and cheaper. We're putting some additives in there that were making it unhealthy, and then on top of that, some of the big writers like Oscar Wilde sort of made absinthe sound like it was hallucinogen. But at the same time, he was on many, many other drugs. So when he sees a waiter with a watering can watering down the sawdust of the bar, and he sees flowers sprouting from it, he's writing that that's the absinthe, but it's a lot of the other stuff that he has had on there. So following these people, it was a big deal for myself and some friends when this actually became legal again. It's something that we could try here, and I actually found it in Newberry for sale. I had it before then, but it's made its way everywhere. It's typically a higher proof alcohol, 122, 125 at the low end, going up to about 140 with some of the other brands that are in America. I'm sure some of the European ones are higher. So I wrote a couple of pieces that were inspired by that. Before absinthe was legal here, the only way that you could get some of the flavor of it was through a liquor called Pernod. Pernod was one of the original makers of absinthe, but they, when absinthe became illegal, they removed all the stuff out of it that wasn't allowed and just gave you the flavor of it. So I first got that before absinthe became legal, and I challenged myself I got a list of drinks that you can make with this Pernod, and I wrote a short story in a very poetic form based off of that list of drinks. So this probably has about 30 to 40 different cocktails listed within the narrative. Maybe like this. There we go. I sat with Perroquet and Suessa at the edge of the abyss. One step from drunk, one falter from skid row, one stumble from drunk, and one fall from the end of everything. But really, it was just a railing separating the outside tables from the public sidewalk, as was required by the city. Exhaling smoke from a cigar he stole while the bald proprietor was gossiping elsewhere. Perroquet suggested a peep show. We bring Sue, we get in free. I declined and was going to begin monologue about parting with dollars for false affection, but was distracted by the sun off tinted glass. Perot's nose, long and broken several times, caught this reflection. A green dragon slouching over a dark ale, slurping foam. Look out, Sue, I warned. She'll be fine, Tayshawn. It's nothing she hasn't seen in the mirror every time she undresses. Another 20 or so won't kill her. Suessa said nothing to defend herself, and there was no sign of shrugs or smiles to show embarrassed agreement. I began to wonder, was Sue mute? Maybe even deaf? Had I heard her speak on previous occasions, or were those just Perot's words in place of her voice? Enjoy the mind games of trailer park matriarchs, I said, but Sue and I are going to enjoy this fine French afternoon. I wanted to get her alone, see if I could get one word to pass through her millionaire lips, silicone and Botox, building blocks of an expensive and permanent pout. Perot stood up and rubbed his bag of filth. First of all, France is 3,408 nautical miles from the scenery, and you can buy Sue as many Pernod cocktails as you like. You'll never stand a chance. It'll take a month in the Waldorf for that. At $729 a night, no man in this town could afford that. Perot may be ugly and crude, but his memory, when it came to useless numbers, was beautiful. If this world was nothing but oceans, he could tell you how long every route would take by freighter. You might as well come with me to the licorice twist. There's this dame there that set a tiger tail into her thong, purrs just like a cat when she's in your lap. I'll take my chances with Sue, I said. Again, she made no comment. Perot was not to be deterred and said nothing more, merely downed his drink and began counting paces away. I was alone with Suessa. I looked cool, nonchalantly south, watching our third wheel vanish. She watched the northwest with misty ice eyes. That was the direction of rain clouds over Travers, the direction of Alberta winds, or perhaps the direction of a long-lost lover to which I will never compare. Suessa, with her plastic surgery, yellow parrot lipstick, and disinterested stare, was destined for a big city, or a home by the sea. There was rumor that she had dated Mike Tyson before he went crazy. The tabloids reported that she stole a kiss from Madonna in one of the star's secret tinted car rides through hometown. Those newsprint gossip columns made her a maiden's dream. Young lesbians passed through White Way, flirting with the ever-present Suessa in hopes of secondhand star saliva. And here I was, alone with her. The pressure of solitude made me nervous. To break the silence, I sang, making up the chorus and the refrain. I'm blue with you, alone though together. Suessa was unmoved. Her stare still to the northwest like snake venom. Our interaction was like fox and hounds. She hid, her voice hid, and I gave chase. If I wasn't going to get her to speak, I thought I'd try for other communication. A kiss, maybe more. I signaled the waitress and ordered another, drank it too fast, and leaned in for a kiss. She did not resist. The air between us was hot like Gulf air. She did not resist, but did not kiss back. Still, my mind shouted victory as I continued these physical motions upwards towards freckled cheeks and red hair. She was my Irish whip, cruel but sensual. I was in love. Every star was shining. The earth tremored. This moment was earthquake number 2 that first felt at 15 with nameless curvy debutante at Higgins Lake. Her aloofness only inspired me, and then the moment was over. Pervert, the waitress said, as she hoisted Suessa over her shoulder, inside, away from my eternal commitment. Even still, my heart raced, my passion full. I watched as Sue's skirt inched upward towards her jealous lover. On that perfect ass of our muse, our benefactor, our fantasy were the words, Big Time Mannequin Factory, Des Moines, Iowa. Now this next one is when I moved on to absinthe from Pernod. We don't taste that. Absinthe is very expensive. It's about $70 for a fifth for the weaker stuff, and then it goes up from there. One of the art galleries that I had read a lot at was working to become an absinthe bar, and so there was always some absinthe on hand there. But again, it's very expensive, and it's something that you just enjoy once in a while. And there was a glass of it sitting on a table before reading as we're setting up, and somehow 3 of us, in the same clumsy moment, bumped into this glass and shattered it completely and spilled all this expensive drink all over the floor. So I turned that one into a poem that had nothing to do with the glass of absinthe breaking, but involuntary manslaughter. Each of the guilty. It took 3 of us to kill her. Each of the guilty had his reasons, but not one among us planned to follow through. She had stolen money from Mark on many occasions. Vance was married to her, but she had cheated on him with Mark. She annoyed me. I couldn't stand her shrill voice. And now the 3 of us were much better off. We were poaching walleye on the bay in a skiff procured from the flea market. I'm pretty sure that it was stolen, but the previous owners probably didn't miss it. The hull leaked and was patched with particle board and duct tape. The keel was non-existent and the mainsail was a torn blanket. I had cast in 3 lines, but nothing bit. Mark manned the tiller, trying to give up some more speed. Vance poured himself another drink, losing balance as he did. Oh, well, she sunned herself at the bow, dangling feet in water, talking incessantly about American Idol and her favorite shade of lipstick. Can you shut your mouth for 5 minutes? You're scaring away all the fish, I finally yelled. Like a cat, she pounced to where I sat and kicked her right foot towards my teeth. I caught her heel and pushed it away. Vance stumbled again, dropping his bottle of absinthe, breaking against the gunnel before falling headfirst into her left knee. Mark, distracted by the melee, let the wind get the best of him. and the boom swung hard into her hip. She flipped, hit her head on the starboard side, and went into the water. She didn't swim, she didn't tread, she just started to sink. Perhaps we could have saved her, but not one among us felt the need. I lit a cheap cigar in celebration, pulled a bitter smoke between my lips a few times before tossing it into the 140 proof anise-flavored alcohol that Vance had spilled. A blue flame appeared quickly and spread among the shoddy construction of our vessel. I grabbed a life jacket and jumped into the water. Vance and Mark did likewise. We awaited rescue and prepared the tragic story of how we lost her in the fire. It took 3 of us to kill her, and Lake Huron hid the evidence. There was one line in there that I'd read about, can you shut your mouth for 5 minutes? Well, there's a coffee house that I'd read at before downstate, and the people weren't always respectful of the poets, and somebody was talking very loud, and if they got to that line, they just shut up. And so it worked well for that. It wasn't intended to. I'm trying to see the time here. It's kind of a glare right there. How many, 5 minutes? Or is it over?
Almost time.
Almost time. Okay. Well, what I'll do is I'll recite one quick one for you here, and so we can let the open mic take over. This one I typically save for nights of the full moon, but it's a few weeks off, 2 weeks off, I believe, or a little under 2 weeks. So it's my first UP reading, so let's go for it tonight. The moon tonight is why I write a shoebox negative of a sunrise in Hades, only the shadow Helios among the flame. Cadmium orange spilled on thrift store black satin, abstract expressionist attends the prom. Celine makes at me jack-o'-lantern faces, her flirtations invoke the label poet, and I agree. Thank you.